What's up, y'all? LTJ Reeves is here. This is Throwing Light, and if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. We are getting ready to start, I believe, episode 157 here with Don Jose. Before we get started, I want to remind everybody, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow my YouTube channel. All the Throwing Light interviews are there. Besides the Throwing Light interviews, we have our Throwing Light tour panels that I've been doing. I have San Francisco posting this week. We've been in New York. We're going to be going up to New Orleans. I have two crossover panels for Thorn Light, one at AKW, Awesome Peak Weekend that I just completed. And also we have one coming up for IML, so please follow for that. I just accepted my next acting gig, so please follow for that, as I'm going to be also posting short films and projects that I'm working on personally. I want you to get involved in or to see what I'm doing. And I am working on a documentary for the Texas Other People. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. How's it going, Don Jose?
Going pretty good. Just enjoying my Sunday afternoon and unwinding after Austin Kink weekend. It was a blast.
I am exhausted from Awesome Pink Weekend. I'm drinking coffee. Um, it was Awesome Pink Weekend is a lot. It's always a lot. It's a lot of fun. So many people to see, never enough time. Let me turn my fan on.
Okay.
All right. It was a little, the weather was a little chilly for April in
Yes.
Texas, which was interesting. So we had a little bit of a little minor winter spell with some 50-degree weather.
Yes.
So,
Make
Don
perfect weather.
Jose, let's get started here. Why don't you tell
Okay.
everybody how you first got involved into the leather kink community?
Well, I found leather by accident when I was 18, 17, 18 years old. I walked into the crossing here in Austin, which was a bar that was on 7th and Red River, and I saw some men in leather, and I like the look. It interests me. So I just by watching them, I figured out which of them I could speak with, which was later I discovered was a submissive.
Hmm.
So I spoke with him and then he introduced me to the rest of the group. That's how I met my first master. He, he just mentored me into the community. So I've been at this for a really long time. I about 40 years. So
Fun fact, Don Jose was my judge for the Mr. Ross Eagle contest. That was the one I won. Thank
yeah,
you.
that is.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And what, yeah,
You helped change my life.
yeah. And one thing that brings up with you winning that title is, I don't know if you remember, but I told you that I would be watching you to see what you would do after your title year, to
Yeah.
see if you were still around. And you know what? You still are. You're
So,
still making a difference. You're still a leader in the community, which
yeah,
is
I
important.
appreciate that.
It's important to do that.
That's great. No, I appreciate it. And like I at Austin Peak Weekend, I did a no title needed panel,
Mhm.
and yeah, I would say I've had more fun post title without it, being able to kind of like find my footing and see where
Yeah.
I belong. But like when I first stepped on the stage of Austin Peak Weekend in 2023, like my intention was never to come here and just be talk. Like
Yeah.
like I hope I proved that I'm here to stay and
Mhm.
to make a long impact. Being in this community for 40 years, you have seen obviously a lots of ups and downs. I
I
guess
have.
we would be in agreement that we're going through some downs right now. Let's be honest, as an elder in the community, does this ever get exhausting for you? You know what I'm saying? Having to go to continually fight, especially,
Yeah.
we made a lot of progress in the 2010s, and to kind of see that come
Kind of just
backward.
get swept away.
Yeah.
It's been goes in spurts. I had to pull back a little bit. As you know, I just don't go out as much right now. I did have to pull back because it was getting exhausting. But I still continue to do the legislative work, the protests, all the other things that go on. I wish I could spend more time in different leather events, but I just don't travel out of town as much anymore. So I don't get to go to all the big events, but that's the reason I'm grateful Austin Cake Weekend is here. It's their fifth year, so that's really good. And like you're saying, the community has changed tremendously from when I came in. And it was in about 2000, the master that I had at the time pushed me to form an organization here in Austin, which I did. It was the Central Texas Boys of Leather. It was a submissive group because there wasn't one around. So we formed one here in Austin, and then Houston formed one as well, and then Dallas did as well. So we were forming these groups with submissives, which at the time was very unusual because before that, submissives were meant to be seen and not heard. So, and with time that's changed, which is great because there's some great leaders in the community who are submissives. And without them, a lot of stuff would not get done.
I
So,
think
and that part is great to see.
yeah, I've seen that more as a more recent person in the community. I've noticed submissives in leadership now a lot more.
Mhm.
I didn't know what that was like beforehand, but the fact that you have a lot of even slaves in leaderships and
Yeah,
things like that.
you do.
So I'm glad that we're open minded to that aspect of it. Um, you've been here in Austin your whole life, or what?
Between here and Mexico City,
So how have things changed since how long have you been in Austin?
I've been in Austin since 82.
So I mean, like for real, I got here in 2014. So like, let's be
Um,
real. Let's have a conversation. How has Austin changed? Has it changed for the better, for the worse? Was there? How has the presence of leather changed in this community?
it's changed dramatically because in the like in 20, I started Austin Gears because there were no leather organizations left here in Austin. They had all just kind of dissipated over time. And a lot of the guys, Austin got hit really hard with AIDS. Austin, we got hit hard here. A majority of the leathermen here in town died. Just to be frank, that's what happened. And the ones that didn't die, they started moving away. So they went to where there was more leather. So they went to Dallas. They moved to San Francisco. They moved to New York. They were just going away because people were preparing to die. So I'm going to go somewhere I've always wanted to live because I'm going to die. And that kind of changed in the late 90s because of the medications that started coming in. And then by 2000, we were like, oh, fuck, what are we going to do now? We're not going to die. So, I had to start forming community again. And I think that's one thing that's changed. And it's really great to see the leather community here in Austin because it has grown tremendously, and it's great to see the young people that are involved as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm a part of Austin Gears. And I've wanted since to be a part of it was just to try to help us get to the future. And I hope
Yeah.
that my ideas and my push for progress and change. I hope
Mhm.
that I can make an impact in that. But I would love to see Austin Gears truly, especially with having a current female title holder, and then we have
Yeah.
Cable as non-binary. I'm hoping that we can expand our group to really show that diversity.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get confused with leather groups, and I think even maybe with the
Yeah.
people that everything's just for cisgender men. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I have
And
been taught.
that's one thing really great about Unseen Gears. It's when I formed the group, the intention was for it to be a gateway group. I wanted people to come to Gear Night, enjoy themselves, and then from there, meet people that get into rubber, meet the puppies, meet all these different groups that would come together for Gear Night, and then you would meet each other and form your social, for your you time. And I think it's worked. It's you have all these different groups now here in Austin, which is wonderful.
So this is a crazy question. I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
Um, so, what's been the most challenging decade you think for the LGBTQ plus community? I'm going to go with 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Personally, for me, it was the late 80s was horrible. It was I don't know. I think you speak to gay men of a certain age, um, and those of us, it, you speak to some of us of a certain age, and we AIDS, our lives is before AIDS and after AIDS. That's the way we talk. Um, because it devastated our community, and it very much molded us, a lot of us, into who we are today.
That's
So
true.
I think that was a very difficult period. But it
This
was because of that period that we were able to start fighting for our rights, and we found our voice to be able to come out and demand action. I was involved with ACT UP, and I was involved with some of these other leather organizations that we demanded that there be drugs made, and we then started to demand our rights. And, by 2015, we're like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And then it all just went to shit. So,
it's quite interesting, and like people today, especially these anyone and these children being born after post
mhm,
2000, they don't know a life. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
We now got people being born into the world of prep and
yeah,
access, which is completely different. I bring this
it
name up
is.
so much often, but now I can bring up this name and you can understand where I'm coming from. But
Mhm,
when I was a child, and the Real World on MTV had come out,
yes,
and the San Francisco season came out with Pedro Zamora.
yes,
I've told this story, and I'm going to tell this story to you too. I think as a child watching Pedro on television, like I absorbed that his push for sex education to try to help people because Pedro was only 22 when he died
yeah,
from AIDS. But he was so intentional, and I consider him like one of our biggest heroes because he went on television with the intent to make a difference and to
mhm,
expose the world. So, as I got older, I never thought that that would be a deal breaker for a relationship for me. Because I'm like, okay, like you can love somebody, you can be with someone. There are safe ways to be with someone.
yeah,
So I never grew up with this mentality that, oh my God, this person has HIV or AIDS. Oh, I can't, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm always grateful that you never know how culture is going to impact us. And I just think that's something that really impacted me as a child. And I was able to grow up with that in the back of my head that don't be
mhm,
scared, don't be fearful, ask questions, be safe, be educated, that type of thing.
yeah.
Um, who are our heroes today, you think?
I don't know. I'm Pete Buttigieg. So it's like, I don't know.
No. But it's not
So,
that.
I mean,
I'm talking about that strong leadership of change and motivation, and we don't have that, do we?
no, not really.
Okay.
We have local people that are very outspoken, local people that aren't afraid to cause some good trouble. And I think that they deserve recognition at times as well. I'm not going to name any names because I don't want to get in trouble. So but I think there's some local people that are great leaders. I think I find I have mentored, um, it's great to see some of the leaders that are in place here in Austin today, knowing that I had a hand in mentoring them to get to where they are today. Um, that
And
was never my
you
intention. It
and
was just,
created me, so you know
yeah.
what I'm saying. Like, think about that. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
So
true.
it's those people, I think at times some of the leaders that we have here in town don't realize that there's younger people looking up at them. They're watching their actions, they're watching how they carry themselves, how they act. So that's the reason why it's really important to make sure that you are being respectful when you're around areas, and just mind, especially with consent and respect and all those, make sure they're there. The young ones are watching, because I remember being young and watching. I mean, things were different, but I just stood back, watched, to see how they interacted with each other, to see how the men and the leather men would interact with each other, and the consent that was involved. And, things are different now. The consent's very different than what it was 40 years ago, but it was still there.
To be honest, I didn't hear consent as much as I did until I got in this community. So that makes me interesting of how much consent is talked about outside our community. Is consent something that heterosexuals really talk about?
A lot of them follow RAC. I mean, you know what RAC is? Risk aware consensual kink.
Okay.
It's just being aware of your surroundings and the risks that are involved with it. And they are different groups. The MS community is really big on consent. And but just like everybody, there's always issues. There's always problems in the community. And there's nothing wrong with calling someone out um if they're not following consent. If somebody goes in the bar and just grabs someone without asking for permission, there's something wrong. And I don't think there's anything wrong in calling out someone and saying, hey, this is what we do here. This is how we do it. And if you can't follow our basic rules, maybe you're not invited into our community.
What direction would you like to see the leadership move towards? Like, what do you think is some of the goals and focuses that we need here in Austin and Texas statewide?
I think there needs to be more emphasis towards the women in leather. I personally know I have women friends that are in leather, and just speaking with them, they share that. I mean, there's just not enough, I think, for them to be active in. There's an organization here in town called Bound by Desire, and I think that if you were to ask some of the leathermen here in town, they wouldn't even know who they are. So it's important to give them the voice that they need and to help uplift them. Because I think one thing I am very I respect my leather dykes. I respect my women in leather because they were the ones that were there. I remember, I was a kid. I was 18 years old and my friends were dying, and it was the women that were there helping take care of us. It was the women that were there watching over. It was the women that made sure that those of us that were young were still being able to live our lives. So I think that we need to uplift now. It's our turn.
Yeah,
Let's help
I
them.
agree with that. I have we have some great women in leather and in leadership in Texas. We do.
Mhm.
I
We
would
do.
love to tap into having more. And like what I've run into, and I've talked about this too, is just women and trans people don't feel like that representation and that visibility is there for them. So,
Yeah.
and this is something I've said a lot of times. I've been doing throwing like tour panels, and women that
Hmm.
I've had on the panel are trans people say pretty much the same thing. Like, like for instance, producing leather for women to wear.
Yeah.
The thing where we're at is the leather makers are like, well, we don't have the demand for it. We don't have we don't. But women are like, well, you got to create it so that we can come and see if it fits
Yeah.
us. So that
If you created some, I think it will go. There was a vendor at Austin Kink Weekend they make harnesses and they have women style for those, not even for people who have breasts, they have those type of designs, which are really great to see. Um I think, just to follow back on that, I want to uplift women, but I mean I want to ask them what they need. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's a big thing. I don't want to make something for them. I want them to tell me what do you need from me to help uplift you.
right, yeah,
So I think that's an important part too, because I remember, you know, when I was young, being Latino in the community was very different. The leather was a white thing. Leather was a white thing in the 80s and the 90s. It was white. And I had to deal with at times being the only person of color in a room. And I had to learn how to balance being fetishized and learn how to, okay, is this person going to want to play because of who I am or because of how I look? So there's the difference.
how challenging has it been for you as a Latino and as a Latino person in color? What are some of the specific things, like for instance being fetishized? How?
What do you mean? So having a white man want to be with me just because I'm brown? Yeah, you know how that goes. So it's like you have people that hit on you specifically because you're brown. And, yeah. So being young, I didn't see it as much because I was young and I didn't realize it was happening to me until I got older and realized that it was happening to me. Because when you're young, you just think, oh my God, I'm getting laid.
So let's backtrack and try to analyze this a little bit
Okay.
more. So, people are with you because you're brown. Let's go a little bit deeper. What is the expectation for people that are just coming for you for aesthetic reasons? Like, what about Latino men is their expectations? Like, what is that?
Well, they expect Latino men to be uncut.
Okay.
The whole thing. They expect you to be uncut and they expect you to be submissive. They subservient. I mean, that's some of the aspect. And I mean, you have to understand when I came out, it was in the early 80s. It had not been that long since Jim Crow. It had been 25 years since people of color were allowed to even mix with white people. So you're going into these bars where these older men that are 50 years old were not used to having people of color around them. So I am pushing my way into a community that was white and had been white for a long time. You talk about how the leather scene started. I mean, we got to be honest with ourselves. It was white. It wasn't of color. So those of us that started finding the community started finding what leather meant to them and started. I was drawn into it because of the just the integrity in it and the things that were expected from you and the protocol. I love protocol. Protocol just sucked me in. And I think dealing with that and to where we are now, I think is a big thing. So I also don't want to come out. I don't want to come out and portray as an angry brown person either, though. So just I'm not angry. I think.
I don't think you're angry either. um, so how can Latino people and leather, what are some ways to push through the fetishizing and the stereotypes? What are some ways that we can help the Latino community be taking more seriously in their efforts to help build a better community?
Well, I mean, it's happening. We just had the Mr. Texas Leather is Latino, and I mean, it's not like it's the first time. Beacon is Latino, so I think it's really great. You've had these people who are immigrants that have held the title, so I think that's wonderful to see, and it's also acknowledging, that we come in all shapes, all sizes, all colors, all languages. You got people that speak Spanish and Portuguese and all kinds of stuff, and they're French and they're Latino, especially from the Caribbean. So it's like I think just it's a lot of it to try to push in together. But there's movements that are going. One of the contestants talked about some of the events that he has started and Cuadrado and stuff. And that's a really great movement within the leather community for Latino specific. I think I really enjoy going to Mexico City as often as I do because I'm also involved with the leather community there. And it is, first time I went, it was wonderful to be surrounded. I'm not gonna lie. It was wonderful to be surrounded by people who look like me and understand that we're all in, we're leather. This is the expectations that we have for each other, and yet we were all brown. So I mean, it was a beautiful experience.
Where do you see the future of our local leather community going? Like, where do you envision that we need to move as a community towards?
Well, Austin is relatively a small city. Our leather community here they need to work together. I think the het community needs to work more in line with the queer community and the gay men and lesbians and the queers. We all just need to come together. We have to come together because that's the only way you can maintain organizations. Because if not, you can end up with these groups that have 5 people. Because I mean, Austin's not that large. When you start looking, at the kink community is not that big compared to like Dallas or I mean San Francisco and New York. It's smaller, so we have to work together. And I think the Eagles done a really good job with that. It's brought a lot of different organizations, and everybody's intermingles with each other, and so yeah, that's been great.
Awesome. All right, Don Jose, there is one question left. We are towards the end of this. All right, I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked everybody. What is one
Okay.
aspect of our community that you feel that we are not spending enough light shedding on?
Oh, that's a good
What would
question.
you
Let me
what would
see.
you what do you think we need to shed more light on?
I think that we, as an older queer men, or assume that younger people are aware of PrEP, that they're aware of DoxyPep, and they're not. I think that because of the climate that we're in, political climate we're in, it's not being taught in schools anymore. So they're coming out and they're young, they're 18 years old, 19, 20 years old, and they have no idea. And they're putting themselves in danger. And I think that's one of the things that I really strive for. And just with the different organizations that I work with and with different people that I work with, just trying to get that information out when someone is young. And yeah, I think that there's a presence out there, but I think there needs to be more emphasis on the younger people so that way they can take it, I don't want to say seriously, but just more.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Don Jose, that brings us towards the end of our episode. Thank you so much for being a guest on here. I would love to have you
You.
back. There's one thing you have to do. Remember, I'm going to count to
Like
three.
I see it all the time.
I'm going.
Oh my God. My mind just went completely blank.
All right, I'm going to count to three, and you're going to say if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
One, two, three.
If you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
There we go. You made it.
There you go.
You made it. You
Thank you. Thank you
survived.
so much. Appreciate
No,
it.
thank you. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your presence,
Yeah.
Don. I should have had you on this show way before now. But like I
Yeah,
said, if there's any way that you see fit that we can work together and I can be assistant, please let me know
definitely.
because I'm here to
Oh,
do it.
I'll come tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I need some help with this. Let's get this
Please,
done.
please,
So,
that's what I want. I'm like, especially right now.
mhm.
I don't think it's I don't think it's possible to work hard enough. We got to keep
Yeah,
working hard. You know what I'm saying?
we do. We
There's
do.
no like rest. Like there has to be
There isn't.
continual hard work.
Yeah.
So I'm
Because right now I'm doing a lot of work in the background. I'm doing a lot of immigration work right now. And
cool.
I'm really careful about saying too much publicly because I have had friends that have said stuff publicly and then they've been profiled by ICE.
Yeah.
So in order for me to keep doing the work that I'm doing, at times I stay quiet publicly, but
Okay.
privately I'm helping people getting the job done, raising money, getting things done. So yeah,
Right
difficult
on.
out there right now.
Right on. Okay. All right, y'all. Well, that has been another episode of Throwing Light. We are out.